Red Lights and Warm Nights by DeQuena Washington. After she has sufficiently stained a base of operations, she moves on. Clothes, shoes, and jewelry all shoved into a pink rhinestone bag she picked up one vibrant evening in Paris. Paris. What a trail she left behind there. The streets rife with merriment and unsavory acts, made clean when performed sans shame. In the hours that squeak by after midnight, she comes alive. She is nocturnal and is driven by things she is only faintly aware of. All she knows is that she wakes up every night and feels something pulse within her, and it drives her every move, her every thought. There is only one constant for her, only one thing she is ever fully aware of, and it's the thirst. She is sure that the thirst is the only thing that colors her purpose. It's funny how the word thirst crosses the physiological barrier. When one hears the word, they imagine dissatisfaction, discomfort, obsession, need. There are only a few things that someone really needs, but nearly all that breathe thirst for more just the same. She thirsts to be chosen. She watches the men that enter the room, shrugging on the dim lighting like a shroud. They hold up their fingers and they point. They take pleasure in the pointing, she thinks. Some of them smile as they browse the wares. Some don't. Most are dead-eyed. The resigned men, she finds, are the easiest ones. The ones that smile are there to have fun while they struggle to counteract whatever sadistic nature their good humor hides. There are many of this type that even she cannot handle, and she usually gives them what they want and sends them on their way. She'd categorized every man she'd met, or would ever meet, by the time she was 15. After school, she'd sit on a stool behind the counter at her mother's brothel, a marble and glass place called the Flop House, while she studied and labeled every single man that came through the door. The act was a complex play at taxonomy. She studied their speech, their mannerisms, or hid behind the walls while they had sex and conversed with the working women. And she took detailed notes that she kept in a leather-bound book that had a lock of her great-grandmother's hair in the spine. Most would have applied patterns and tendencies to certain people and grouped them by race, age, weight, gender, height, anything the eye can see. She tended to look a bit deeper. She read energies and applied them to the behaviors. She dreamed about them at night and got to know them in ways that transcended skin and bone. That is truly the only way to possess a man, she learned. Night after night, she beholds these men as they enter the dim light, and they point their fingers, their tongues sluggish and wet in their mouths. Wherever she may be, on whatever side of the earth she ends up, in whichever brand of the flop house she inhabits, the men step into the dim lighting, and they point, and they pick whatever will satisfy their thirst for the night. In places like this, their basest desires are beckoned, fed, and intensified. She only figures out who she's got in her room once she closes the door behind them. It is then that her mind pages through a visualization of all those notes she'd made long ago, and she decides what brand of enticement to employ. Tonight, she's got a shy boy with brown eyes and a scalp tattoo. He is her complexion, dark with red undertones, and he smells like sandalwood. She removes her leather bikini top and throws it at his face. He smiles and plucks it from his lap. "Which number am I?" he asks, with a lopsided grin. Instantly, and surprised by her need to do so, she adjusts her classification. He isn't what she first perceived at all. She stands back to take him in and see him clearly. "Truly, I'm wondering, how many other men have you been with tonight?" he asks. She smiles and walks over to touch the cover of the leather-bound book with its encouragements, spells, recipes, incantations, her classifications, her studies. She turns back to the man. "What's your name?" she asks. He shakes his head and smiles in response. "No names," he says. She nods. She's got him now, at least. She knows what he's thinking as he gets to his feet and puts his watch and wallet on the nightstand. He unclips his sidearm and puts it there too. He cracks his knuckles. It is at moments like these that she realizes how human she really is. She is not omniscient, just shrewd, calculating, and generally intelligent. She's read a lot, experienced a lot, saw more than anyone ever has. She's killed more time than anyone she's ever met. And killing time, for her, involves training and educating herself. Fully understanding the mind of a stranger, however, poses a unique challenge even for someone of her mental fortitude. It happens rarely, but she sometimes finds herself out of her depth, and at a complete loss about a man that she may initially think she's got all figured out. Every once in a great while, because she has no special or unique power to avoid the pitfalls of occasional human error, she'll miss something, like how she missed the fact that this man carries a sidearm, which would have alerted her to his disposition immediately. "You look pensive," the man says. He undoes his cufflinks. Detective or high brass? She can't quite peg that. Using words like pensive, though, she wouldn't be surprised if she's made another mistake, and he's not a cop after all. "I am," she says. She slides off her underwear, hoping to distract him, while she gathers her bearings. He watches her with rapt attention, then slides his wedding ring off and massages the place where it was. He pats the bed, but remains standing. "Have a seat," he says. "Never seen you here before. You new?" he asks. She is. Her pink rhinestone bag is barely unpacked. She'd blown in and got right down to business. She knew the Black Cat's proprietor from an enjoyable romp a few years previous, and he'd agreed to get her on the line. She promised herself that she would keep it clean here, since she was dealing with someone who could identify her clearly. One of her few dangling attachments. "I'm new to the Black Cat," she says. "What's your name again?" "I don't think I caught it," he says. If it wasn't important enough for you to remember, I'm sure it doesn't matter, she says with a smile. Something flashes in his eyes, and she feels fear. She is bewildered by this reaction, and almost says or does something to get him to go away. She doesn't, however. She merely sits on the bed where he told her, and waits for things to unfold. Could you do me a huge favor? He asks. It's your money, she answers. Get on all fours and get real close to the wall so that your face is almost touching it, he says. He widens his stance and crosses his arms. She turns away from him and gets onto her hands and knees, her elbows like jelly. What you got in mind, baby? She asks. She sounds warm and lustful, to even her own ears. And she smiles when she catches the shift in his stance that suggests she may just have broken through whatever barrier he's erected. I don't have anything in mind. I've got everything on the tips of my fingers, though, he says. She stares at the wall, her nose almost touching, her cool breath blowing back on her, ricocheting off the paisley-patterned wallpaper. She doesn't hear a belt unclasping, zipper falling. He isn't even moving. She waits a few beats. When you going to let me have it? She asks. Oh, don't worry. You'll see it coming, he says. She waits again, and so much time passes that she wonders if this was his thing. Maybe he isn't planning anything else but staring at her butt as she faces away from him. She's done weirder things for more run-of-the-mill men. Soon, you'll know the pain you've caused, he says a few moments later. She smiles, and he can't see it. She closes her eyes and licks her lips. Heat courses through her body. It forms between her legs, between her thighs, and spreads outward, all the way to the tips of her nipples. She turns away from the wall, stretches out her legs, and stomps her heeled feet to the floor. She pulls him by his belt buckle, and he resists only slightly. I'll let you think you've won, he says. But it takes more than this, he begins. His words cut short as she slides his pants down his legs and drops to her knees. His knees shake, and she smiles up at him. His sharp intake of breath imbues her further, and the heat in her body grows. Have I won yet? She asks, letting him drop from her lips. Just a taste, just a taste, he whispers to himself. What was that? She asks, her voice even. I said, I was thinking that I can still see this through. I can still see this through and also get just a little taste, he says. A taste? A taste of what? She asks. Sure, she'd been off in the beginning, and maybe, just maybe, she is not as human as she'd like to be. Maybe she clings to the mirage of her humanity so that she can better assess them, so that they cannot see the truth of her actual substance, or pick up on the reality of her fantastic existence. Please, please, just one little taste, he whines. Her smile is gone as she catches sight of herself in the mirror. No, not as human as she once appeared, not now with her long, sharp teeth looking the way they do, multi-rowed, and dripping from a mouth that juts out from her neck in a grotesque, almost comical way. Sure, she could remain aesthetically pleasing by keeping her true form hidden, but what is the fun in that? It's not like he's in any state to notice the shift. Have a taste, then, she says. Her voice fills the room, yet she doesn't even open her mouth. He is a helpless moth to her flame, a rodent in her trap. His soul is one that she's excited to find. It will serve her master well. The man falls to his knees, and she opens her legs. He laps up the very substance of his doom. She is present enough to enjoy it. She arches a leg over his shoulder and throws back her head. They told me I could resist, he says. They told you wrong, she says. Indeed they had. She had planned to be on her best behavior here. She had felt content to stay for a bit and behave, and spare a few of the men in favor of good sex and wild times, two things she does appreciate. But then, she is not here on earth for that purpose, so to do so would only be a waste of time. She leans forward and covers his face with her hand, and it sticks to the slippery warmth that covers his face. She then gets on top of him to have sex and create the proper chemical reaction. The heat in her body, now stoked, crests and her mutated shape combusts into a glowing version of her former self. She is no longer the immortal beast displayed from the depths of hell, with veiny, fleshy skin, a jaw of sharp teeth, and an abysmal snatch. She is once again the busty, well-proportioned, insanely well-coiffed beauty of a few moments earlier, feeding on the soul of her prey.